from wonderful fields of golden flowers all the way to a dark void and strangers chasing you. It seems as though the afterlife might be a little different for everyone who experiences it.
Yeah, take a journey with us today as we venture into the unknown while we cover part 2 of the top 10 people who saw the afterlife and luckily lived to tell about it.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Fields of Gold. This story comes from a Reddit thread in which the original poster asked the question of what those who had died and been resuscitated remembered seeing. A Reddit user replied to the thread and explained a story that their mom had told them about when her heart stopped during surgery. Their mom thankfully was brought back, and when she recovered enough and woke up from surgery, she later explained that all she remembered was being in a field of flowers. So here I am, hearing that, thinking of Wizard of Oz, everyone's just skipping down the yellow brick road, but turns out maybe it's nothing like that. There was one Redditor who commented on this story with a hot take that kind of made me feel a little uneasy about the whole thing. They explained how it makes sense that the field of flowers is traditionally a more calming image, but that it feels odd to them, a little unnerving and empty, totally devoid of other people. I'm not gonna lie, that does sound quite eerie, but I'm sure for some of you watching this video, that truly does sound like heaven.
Number 9. Flipped over. This next one comes from a user named Harry and Lana. One semester they had a class where a man came in to explain his near-death experience, which is, I gotta say, it's a pretty exciting class. That's a fun drop-in spot, I guess. The man was kayaking with a friend and he ended up flipping his kayak over, worst scenario ever, and then he got sucked under by the current. His friend had to watch him pass out underwater, then get dragged down the river, which is just a nightmare scene. And during his time unconscious, the man describes this dark place, almost as if it was a cave. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that he was in a kayak, maybe it was just coincidence, I don't know. But the walls were soft and almost velvet-like, if that makes sense. And at the end of this cave, there was a plethora of colors, and he described it as a kaleidoscope almost, which is kind of beautiful and almost sickening. I would probably throw up looking at that. It was a stained glass window that was moving, essentially. It was Doctor Strange type stuff. But he saw dark figures passing by on the other side of this glass, which is the concerning part. Who's there? I saw Insidious, maybe it's like that kind of demonic stuff. That dude on the other side of the glass who's like wheeling something, maybe it's something like that, or maybe it's something nice, I don't know. Either way, I want nothing to do with that. He also said you must have to be pretty terrible to go to hell because he himself wasn't the greatest of guys before this. So, you know what I mean? His friend caught up to his body, he was luckily revived, but now the man feels a stronger connection with everybody, and he's grateful to have had this experience, which is nice, I guess, in this sense. The user finishes the story by saying they hope this was calming to hear, as the rest of these are pretty horrifying. I'm not gonna lie, it gets scarier as we go on.
In our number 8 spot today, we have 45 years. In 1943, Dr. George Ritchie died of pneumonia, but after 9 long minutes, he came back and was sure to tell the tale of what happened while he was gone. He went on to write a book called Return from Tomorrow and My Life After Dying. He recounts a lot of stuff in this book, from an out-of-body experience to meeting people, but the last thing he remembered was meeting someone who he calls God. Whoever this person or being was that he met left him a mental message that told him, quote, "It is left to humanity which direction they shall choose. I came to this planet to show you through the life I led how to love. Without our Father you can do nothing, neither could I. I showed you this. You have 45 years. When he came back to his body, he explained that his throat was on fire and that he felt weight on his chest that was crushing him. I'm not exactly sure what this message was supposed to mean. I mean, mostly the whole 45 years thing. Dr. Ritchie passed away in 2007, which was almost 64 years after his near-death experience, but whatever this message was intended to mean, that was probably the coolest and most terrifying thing in the world.
Number 7. Love is in the air. It's 1983. Dave Bennett, chief engineer of an underwater research vessel, aka my worst nightmare of a job. One night he was in the ocean and he didn't mean to be. He was thrown in from the vessel and he drowned. What he felt afterwards was wild. He felt like there was some omnipresence keeping him from being alone, which is comforting but also terrifying on paper. He felt some sort of comfort and recalls the darkness slowly coming to life. As darkness was slowly fading into light, he began to move towards it. Dave himself reflects on this, saying, "As I got closer, there were waves and waves of love that were just wrapping me in this warm embrace. It was the most amazing feeling I ever had, and it felt as if this love was actually permeating my being, and it transformed me into this being of life." That's a lot of knowledge. You're now woke. As I got closer to the light appeared to me like it was millions upon millions of fragments of light. End quote. That's jam-packed, okay. He even recalls seeing his family, not like his family that he knew, or even ancestors for that matter, but his soul family. Apparently that's a thing. His soul family told him to go back to the land of living and fulfill his purpose. And after 18 minutes later, he popped back to the surface, just full of knowledge and wisdom, it seems.
In our number 6 spot today, we have The Void. I'm not exactly sure what caused this woman's close encounter with death, but she is another person who experienced the black void that a lot of other people have as well. She explains that she was drawn in by the dark void after her death. She said she did not feel her body, which made her totally terrified. She said this is when she just experienced nothingness, and said it was like a dream-like experience. She said she felt drawn in by this void and said it felt like she was heading towards another realm of existence. I'm not exactly sure what that would feel like, but I think I am very grateful that I don't. In the end, she was of course able to be resuscitated and brought back, which I am very glad about.
Number 5. Panorama View. This one comes from a man named Dannion Brinkley. He's a US Marine, businessman, and God, apparently. He survived numerous near-death experiences. One time in 1975, a bolt of lightning had hit a telephone pole, traveled all the way down the line into his body, and then he was dead for 28 minutes straight. This guy woke up in a morgue, which I gotta say, people move fast. 28 minutes, they're really no time wasted. Brinkley recalls floating above his body the entire time. He was watching from above as doctors declared him dead, which I can't even imagine what that feels like. But he recalls the feeling. He saw his entire life passing in front of him like a 360-degree panorama. He had missed nothing at all. You know how many hairs were in the nose of the doctor who pulled you from your mother? You know everything that there is from the time you open your eyes. You have complete cognitive awareness, no doubt about it. And that's all happening at the same time, no doubt about it. And then you watch the same life from a second person's point of view, as if you were your own best friend. So you can see how silly, how funny, and how dumb and how stupid life was, but it's through one of your best friend's point of view, you know? There's no judgments, just looking. And then you literally become every person you've ever encountered, and you feel the direct results of your interaction between you and that person. So no one gets away with anyone or anything. Well, thank you for your service, Dannion. Also, that was the wildest thing I've ever heard in my life. We'll talk about him more. He's obviously going to appear back up in this list.
In our number 4 spot today, we have The Strangers. This story comes from Tyler Black 729 on Reddit, but it is actually a story from their father and his experience while having open heart surgery when he was in his 20s. The doctors had to stop his heart for around 20 to 30 minutes during the procedure so that they could put a mechanical valve in. Before this surgery, he explained that he wasn't on a great path in life and had been involved in some things he definitely shouldn't have been. So, while his heart was stopped on the operating table, he found himself in a very dark place and he began wandering and searching around. This is when he started running into really scary people that looked very strange, and they were all screaming at him. He was running away as fast as he could and found a corner to hide in. The people were continually getting closer though, and right before they got him, he saw his grandmother, who had previously passed away, and she reached down to grab him. The next thing he remembered was being back in the hospital. He is convinced that he was in a temporary hell, and this scare was enough for him to completely turn his life around.
Number 3. Dannion Brinkley again. Yeah, like I said, he survived multiple near-death experiences, so we had to throw in one more. I know you're curious, right? Of course. In 1989, during an open heart surgery, Brinkley was again declared dead. He was sure this time that he had visited the afterlife, so he wrote a book about it this time. This book was called Saved by the Light. When questioned about his time seeing the other side and if heaven and hell were a real thing, he had an interesting response. He said, if I didn't go to hell in the last 4 journeys, nobody's going to hell, okay? When you learn you don't die, when you learn that you're a spiritual being, you're not going to hell. That's enough to inspire you to change. I don't know, it's almost like a parent being like, hey, we're not gonna ground you, just, you know, be good. It's like, okay.
In our number 2 spot today, we have Peter's NDE story. A Polish man named Peter once tried to take his own life, and that is how his experience on the other side happened. He explained that his first visions were of people right beside him, but they were people in his life who had already passed away. He said that they were all friendly to him, but that they were also terrifyingly sad. After this, he explained that he felt like he was being dragged into a dark abyss that was supposed to be the afterlife, and in seeing the dark distance, he realized how frightening the situation was. He then explains that he was brought back to life by a commanding voice. I'm not sure what this commanding voice was, but I am glad he heard it and listened. Peter's story has also been featured in a book titled The Polish Life Afterlife.
And finally, number 1. Hana's pneumonia. This last one of the day comes from a Czech woman named Hana who experienced complications from pneumonia, which led her to her near-death experience. While others on this list have somewhat calming recollections of the afterlife, how they felt, and all that jazz, and how hell may not even be a thing, which is, I gotta say, phew. This one here is more of what Hana saw. It left me feeling off. Hana saw a gray area that had lots of scattered boards and beams of light and stuff, and then she explains that in the top right, there was a circular light with an extremely bright center that she said felt really inviting and that it was pulling her in almost. This was like the center thing, I don't know. This could be the light that Dannion saw and titled his book after, who knows. It was at this point she realized what was happening and the light was leading her into the official other side, and suddenly I realized with horror that it was a transition between life and death, she says. I do not want to enter. I have not tried everything in my life, and she was brought back swiftly after that moment. Maybe the trick is to tell whatever or whoever that you're not ready. It's pretty wild also to do, so who knows. Thanks for sharing, Hana. We're glad everything's okay. Those are the top 10 people who saw the afterlife and lived to tell it. If you want a part 3, comment down below and we'll gladly return. I'm Taylor McWaters.
I'm Olivia Kozlowski.
Bye.